All right, exciting time. We're about a week away from the start of the draft. I know your staff has worked really hard trying to put this all together. How much tinkering is left on your board, if any?
Yeah, not a lot right now. We still need to, Brian, myself, his staff need to get together and see where there are some discrepancies. We don't have a lot, but you know, the way that the coaches see certain players and the way we see certain players. So there's a few guys that we're off on that we're just going to get in a room. We're going to watch the film together as a group. We're going to talk about what we see, what they see, and really try to build consensus on where we see a few of the players. But overall, not a lot of tinkering still to be done.
Coach, it's like a parallel universe that goes on in all NFL facilities. You got your guys on your roster. You're trying to get things going for the season. You're working with Joe and his staff. Just talk about having the players in the building, finally getting guys back, and sort of now starting to implement what you envision this team to look like.
Yeah, I think we've had a productive 3 weeks. Started out with phase one, and that was just meeting with the players, and then they're getting out into the strength and conditioning program, doing the things they need to do there. And the last week here, we've been out on the field, which has been a lot of fun to have the coaches out there coaching them, seeing the players develop a little bit. A long way to go, but definitely a step in the right direction.
Joe, are you afforded the love or like in the draft process? Like, you could love a guy, or you just have to like him because things could change?
Yeah, I think there's different levels of love. Different levels of love depending where you are. Again, they're not all perfect players, and as the further you get down in the draft, there's a reason that they're there. There's players you'd love to have in the 5th round that you maybe just like in the 4th round if you had to take them there. So varying levels of love, but there will be guys that we love, and that's why they're on the draft board. It's just a matter of what value you get them at. But if they're on our draft board, again, we're going to have, between the coaching staff and the personnel staff, we'll have a divine vision for them, and they'll be ours, and we'll love them as Giants.
Dave, you got a guy you love? No, I don't want name, but is there like, oh, I love this guy. Hey, Joe, I love him. I gotta have him.
Yeah, there's always that. I think that as a coaching side, you watch them, and you're not afforded the whole September. I mean, these guys have done this for the past year basically, so you're just catching up, and inevitably there's guys that coaches fall in love with pretty quick, and you state your case, but you have to have an open mind. Once we draft our players, we're all on board, and we're ready to work with them. And whether they get drafted in the 1st round or the 5th round, I mean, look, there's been plenty of times where you look at a draft that happened 4 years ago and say, how in the heck did this guy get drafted in the 6th round? He should have been taken top 5. But I think that goes back to player motivation, internally. You can't always measure that. So we do the best job we can, and really looking forward to bringing a new class in.
And Dave, you've been in several programs. You've been around some very mature players. You've inherited. You've been at the college level, and then you've developed players. You took a quarterback who a lot of people thought he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn after his rookie year, and all of a sudden he's one of the top guys. Talk about the responsibility of the player in his own improvement, because coaches look great when players play great.
Sure.
And you teach, but when a draft choice comes in, obviously you got to know what his ceiling is, but what is the responsibility of the player for his own improvement?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we look at. Joe and I have talked a lot about that in terms of the intangibles of the player, not just the skill set. You can evaluate 1,000 different skill sets. You got to make sure that they're right for the program that you want to run. But more importantly, what type of people are they? Both on the field and off the field, and are they committed to doing things the right way, the things that you ask them to do, or even on top of that, they're taking extra time out of their schedule to make sure they're making improvements that they need to make. I think that's big. You want self-motivated individuals that are willing to work and do the right things both on and off the field to improve.
You have a collaborative situation with your coaching staff, right? I mean, you've got guys from various programs, different ideas. How's that process been as far as mixing and melding and seeing what works, what doesn't work, what stays, what goes?
It's really been good. There's been a lot of good conversations. I think the minute you think you have all the answers just because you come from a certain system or you coached a certain player, That's the minute that you take 4 steps back. Continuing to have a growth mindset of improving and learning. I've learned a lot since I've been here from a lot of different people, not just Kafka and Wink, but all the assistant coaches, the scouts that we've worked with, the support staff. That's what makes a good organization, is everybody's paddling in the right direction. There's no idea that's too small, and no idea that is so great that you have all the answers. I think it's a collaborative process, one that we're still working through, but it's been good.
Joe, everyone focuses on your top 2 picks, right? And we know pretty much who the top 10 is in this draft, but can you talk a little bit about the importance of back-end roster building, the guys that are day 2 guys and how they can emerge and be foundation pieces for you?
Absolutely, yeah. You can get starters, throughout the draft, depending, how you set your board and how the draft falls. But yeah, I mean, we take pride in all of our picks, whether it's 6th round, 2nd round, wherever it may be. And as we go through the board and we set it and we work with the coaching staff and the scouts, we say, well, what's the role for this player on our team? What is the defined role? How are they going to make the team? What's their upside? What are they going to do year 1? What are they going to do year 3? So, we walk through anybody that's on our board that's a defined plan and it's a clear vision how they're going to make our team and make us better. So, yeah, ideally you'd like them all to come in and start, but that's not always the case. Right. There's a certain threshold where maybe this guy's just going to come in and be a standout special teams player. That's okay. We need those guys too. But yeah, again, if they're, like Brian was saying earlier, if they've got the talent, they're the right type of people, and they fit our culture and what we want to do, we're going to bring as many of those guys as we can. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's going to make us all better.
Some of our season ticket holders had some questions for you, gentlemen. So it kind of dovetails off that point. This is from Lou Damiano from section 126. He said, I'd like to ask Mr. Shane's philosophy to strictly draft the best athlete as opposed to a need, and what's his view on positional value?
Okay, that's a couple different questions. So yeah, best athlete, that's important, but I also think being a best football player is important. So, there's a couple players that we've talked about on the board that, they didn't test well, they didn't have great springs, but you throw on the tape and maybe one of the better teams in, college football, and that person that didn't test well is making, plays everywhere. So to me, instincts and being a good football player is equally as important as the athlete. And then positional value, I do believe in that. We talked about, what some players may be getting in the open market. A corner was just extended this past week, and $71 million guaranteed, $100 million over 5, and you see what the offensive tackles are getting, and you just see quarterbacks. There are positions that are getting paid more on the open market. So I do think that comes into play when you make certain picks throughout the draft, in terms of if you have to go get that outside of your building and it's not through the draft, what's that going to cost you? What are the economics of that type of move? So I do think that's important to take that into account.
Angel Ortega has a question for you, Coach. Section 308. As you've learned with Giants fans, you've got to get the section.
Gotcha.
If you don't get the section in, you're on their list. What type of characteristics are you looking for in your players that would fit the New York Giants culture and that you're looking to build around?
Yeah, the 3 are smart, tough, dependable. People that are intelligent, that do the right thing on and off the field, that have a good toughness about them on the football field, but also when things aren't going great off the football field, being able to push through some things. And then dependability is doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it all the time. Those are the 3 traits that we look for, I'd say, in our draft process when we're looking at free agents, and then we build off of those.
Coach, as you continue through this offseason program and as you're moving through this, what are some of the most important things that you expect out of your players here as you feed them information, and then that retention part of it, and then not making the same mistakes twice?
Sure. Really, you just said it. We implement the stuff in the classroom, but it's a player's game. They're out there performing it out on the field. And if they make a mistake, I don't want them to fret over making a mistake. I want to play fast. When we get the pads on, play physical, and then come into the meeting rooms and correct the things we need to correct. And the players that are not error repeaters, those are the players that will be out there more. The ones that are continuing to make the same mistakes, we'll do whatever we can as a coaching staff to help them, but they got to help themselves too.
Kind of the old adage: coaches don't cut players, players cut players.
Yeah, it's pretty much, and general managers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Looking forward to the next week.